Hi, this is Joe Montana.
This is Dak Prescott.
Hey, this is Jason Kelsey, and you're listening to Rob Maaddi.
Rob Maaddi.
Rob Maaddi.
I am Rob Maaddi, and welcome to the AP Pro Football Podcast. We're heading into Week 9. Weather is getting colder up north. Football weather, for those of you who like it. I don't. I'll take the beach and palm trees every day over this. Steelers still haven't lost a game yet this season. Jets still have no wins this season. Wade Phillips, the former head coach and longtime defensive coordinator in the NFL, he's going to join me to talk football 2020. We're also going to look ahead to some of the big games this weekend with AP Pro Football writer Barry Wilner and Dennis Waszak, who does an excellent job covering the Jets beat for AP. Dennis also happens to have the best, I think, emoji game on Twitter. He's going to join me to discuss the state of the New York Jets and share his very personal experience with COVID-19. Wade Phillips was 82-64 as a head coach with the Broncos, Bills, and Cowboys, and that includes 3 interim stints that he had with the Saints, the Falcons, and the Texans. Wade won a Super Bowl as defensive coordinator with Denver. He went to another one with the Rams a couple years ago. I sat down with Coach this week. Here is that conversation. Wade, you've worked in the NFL for the last 44 years. So first question I want to ask you is, are you still interested in a coaching position? And have you had any calls, any interest? And what's it been like for you this year not being involved so far?
Yeah, it's been tough for, coach to be out of coaching. So I have been out before. And the last time I was out, I was 2014. So I've been through it. Luckily, I got back in 2015 and we won the Super Bowl. So, hopefully that's a good sign for me getting back. But no, I enjoy I love coaching, and I think I have something to offer. So I would like to be coaching somewhere. I wouldn't expect anybody to do anything in the middle of the year to bring somebody in. But next season, I hope to be back out there.
With COVID-19 and the way training camps were set up and no OTAs and none of the stuff off the field during the summertime and the springtime, do you think maybe that impacted any potential opportunities?
Yeah, I think they're not going out hiring a lot of things during this time. So, that hurts some, I think. But, it's just got to be the right time for coaches, right time, right place for coaches. I mean, we tend to move around a lot. My dad said it, and it's true. 2 kinds of coaches: ones that have been fired and ones that are going to be fired. So, so it's happened to most everyone. Even Belichick got fired. So, I mean, it's even the great coaches. And so, a lot of times we're looking for jobs.
Why do you think scoring is up right now? It's at record-setting levels around the league, and I'm sure there's a lot of different theories, and one being the lack of off-season. Is it easier for offenses to make up for not having that practice time and that chemistry than it is defense? Well, what do you think the reason is?
Well, usually defenses are ahead. I think now practice-wise, I mean, defense, it's still a physical game. So, defenses, if they can be more physical, and they weren't able to do that, without a preseason and practice and so forth, I think that hurt them some. Offenses, especially the passing game, you can get all your timing in the passing game with no pads on. They can go out and get all their timing in the passing game, the physical part of the game, the running game, and I think the passing game is really what's kicked up the scoring. That, and I looked at it been a week or so ago, but there were like 16 teams that offensive holding. If they continued on the pace they're on, 16 out of the 32 teams would have less holding penalties than any team had in the league last year. So they're not calling offensive holding penalties. Now that, to me, that's a big, and sometimes they do that in the league, and you don't know about it. I mean, it's happened before with me, so I've been around it. But sometimes the competition committee and they go to the officials and say, we don't want this, or we don't want this called as much, that called. And it seems to me that that's what they've done. They said, hey, we want, since the game is coming back, we want a lot of scoring, and so therefore let's cut back on the holding penalties, just egregious ones, I guess you'd call it. I don't know, but for some reason they've not called as many. Now, one year, you find out about this later. One year we were in the middle of the season and we said, hey, teams are being offside on the kickoff team, and our guys are onside, but they're not calling it against the other teams. And come to find out, the competition committee had told them they gave them leeway of a yard. Well, not everybody knew that. people on the competition committee and their teams knew it, but our teams didn't know it. So, it could be the competition committee is pushing, hey, not as many holding penalties. At least that's my conspiracy theory.
One of the other things also, because scoring is up, teams are coming back from double-digit deficits more so than they have in the past. And again, if they continue at this pace, there'll be more comebacks of that sort. Do you think that's got something to do with maybe prevent defenses? And what are your thoughts? I know you have some thoughts on prevent defenses. So do you think that's a correlation there between prevent defense and more teams coming back from bigger deficits?
Yeah, prevent defense, and a lot of people think it's a bad word, because they don't prevent anything. So, but really a prevent defense has to do with time on the clock, how much time and score. There are times that you need to, not give up a big play, but make them use time, and you're going to win the game, especially if you're ahead by double digits. But there is a difference between prevent defense, in my opinion, and give up defense. And give up is you just start letting them go down the field and don't slow them down, and they score in a minute and a half, and then all of a sudden they start coming back on you. So you still have to be able to play and be aggressive enough in what we call a prevent defense without making a monumental mistake of giving up the big play. People certainly get scared in those situations that they're gonna lose the game because they're aggressive. But the reason you're ahead is probably because you're aggressive. So it's a fine line. There's a fine line in there is what you don't all out blitz. I can tell you that. If you all out blitz and it's 1-on-1 and they get a 70-yard touchdown, that's not smart football. But there are zone blitzes. There are certain man-to-man calls where you double the best receivers and things like that. So, or you play too deep man-to-man with the quarterback can't run with it, those kind of things. So there are certain things you play in certain situations that prevent the other team from scoring enough to beat you. And it has to do with time in the game, certainly, how much time is left in the game. Because, teams run a 2-minute offense. They can run 2-minute offense at any time, during the game. We normally see it before the half and at the end of the game. But if they get behind, they're gonna start running their 2-minute offense early, and you need to have a plan for how to play that.
How about sticks defense? We hear that terminology a lot. 3rd and 13, 3rd and 17, teams playing sticks defense, trying to prevent the first down. And sometimes offenses will be able to sneak in and get that first down. Over the course of your career, how have you viewed those particular down and distance situations and that term sticks defense?
Sometimes people are over conservative in those situations, in that sometimes you got a 3rd and real long, okay, but you got them backed up, and say 3rd and 18. Well, they make 12 or 14, it changes field position. So you're actually hurting your offense sometimes. I mean, by playing too soft in certain situations like that, because field position obviously is important in the game as far as scoring is concerned. That, and like I say, I think that's where a lot of zone blitzes come in, where you can make them throw it quick, pressure the quarterback, but still not be able to give us the big play or the big first down.
Wade, you most recently spent 3 seasons with the Rams. You went to the Super Bowl in 2018. That team that year, you guys in that game held Tom Brady and the Patriots to 13 points, but lost the football game, lost the championship. If someone would have told you you'd be able to hold the Patriots and Tom Brady to 13 in the Super Bowl, I think you would have taken that any time. How did you deal with that disappointment? Because you guys did a great job in the game and still have to come away on the losing end.
Yeah, it's you try to play your best. And there's always things you feel like you could have done better. And we always tell our defense we want to outplay the other team's defense. If they held us to 3, we should have held them to 0, and we didn't do that. So, and that's the way you got to look at it. But yeah, to go into a game against Tom Brady, especially at New England when he was playing at New England, and even now, to hold him 13 points, you feel like you got a good chance to win. Actually, when we won the Super Bowl at Denver, we played him in the championship game in Denver, and we held him to 18. And we had to stop a 2-point play at the end of the game, intercept a 2-point play to win 20-18. So, and one year at San Diego, we had him beat. We had three interceptions, and the 3rd interception, we were running it back, and we got the ball knocked out, and they recovered it, and they ended up winning the game. So he's a tough guy to beat. No
You
matter
mentioned the Super Bowl with Denver in 2015. That was your defense going into that game facing the league MVP, Cam Newton. Carolina had the top-ranked offense in the NFL, and you guys were able to hold them to 10 points. Defense dominated. That had to be – it's got to rank up there. You win a ring, you get the Super Bowl, the defense shuts down the best offense in the NFL. Where does that rank in all of those accomplishments?
Actually, that run, we played the three of the top 5 offenses in the league. In the playoffs, we played Pittsburgh first, and then with Roethlisberger, and then we played Brady with New England, and then we played Cam, who was the MVP, and they were averaging 40 points a game in the playoffs. So, and all 3 of those teams were the top 5 in offense and top 5 in scoring. So tremendous, a tremendous effort on our defensive part, but it takes a whole team, obviously. Our special team played really good, and our offense came through for us at the right times. So it was a fun, you don't have many like that. I've had a long career, but you don't have many where you just dominate in a Super Bowl. It's just happened very few times.
You ever joke with Peyton Manning that you're the reason why the defense is the reason why he earned that second ring? Peyton was in that game reduced to, I guess, a game manager. And we know he's had a Hall of Fame career, one of the greatest ever to play the game, but he earned his second ring on the strength of that. Has that ever been something that you guys talk about, joke about, or anything like that?
No, it's still a team game. And what he did that year, especially coming back, when he came back, it gave the team the spark, although they, didn't have a great Super Bowl as far as yardage and so forth is concerned, but it's still, Gary Kubiak's great about, being able to dominate the game by running the football, taking some time off. Like I just said, those prevent defenses sometimes are really helped by offenses that can control the ball. So, that's what we did a lot that season and helped us win those games.
When you look at the league right now, who are the toughest players to defend against from the quarterback standpoint? Is it the guys like Mahomes who could do everything?
I was going to say beside Mahomes. Yeah, I think he's really special. I said it, the first time I saw him play. And then, we beat him with the Rams a couple of years ago on Monday night. We held him to 51. We beat him 54-51.
They got W.
Yeah. So, but we did have 2 turnovers for touchdowns and sacked him several times and we actually played pretty well defensively, but to give up that many points was crazy. But that's the way you play. You have to play well enough to win. And that's what was great about our team, our Super Bowl team with the Rams. We played well enough to win throughout the whole season. And then certainly in the playoffs and even the Super Bowl, we played almost well enough to win.
You started your NFL coaching career, I'm going to take you way back, under your dad, Bump Phillips, and were able to work with him on his staff before continuing on in your career. What is that like to be able to, and at what point did you know that this is for you, this is your future, this is what you're going to do, you're going to follow in those footsteps?
Yeah, I was always around it because my dad was a coach, obviously. So I was always around football and coaches' meetings and coaches' offices and so forth. Even as a little kid, I was in there when coaches were talking football. So I knew what coaches did, and I knew my dad loved what he did. So, that was the first clue right there. Really, I didn't know until my junior year in college. I didn't really think about it. Like a lot of people, I was just going to school and I was playing football. And I went out to it was San Diego then. My dad was coaching for the Chargers, and I saw their training camp, and I realized, looking at their linebackers, they were bigger and stronger and faster than I was, that I wasn't going to have a career much further than college. So I started thinking about, what am I going to do? Because you just don't keep playing if you're not athletic enough. So then I started thinking about it, and I knew about football. I knew about coaching. I was a smart player when I played. And, you see a lot of players that are into out coaching in the league. It's kind of the same way. The real great ones can't always teach, because it's so easy. Everything's so easy for them. A lot of the really good coaches weren't really good players, but they were smart enough to know how to teach better and teach what should be done. So that's the direction I went.
I'm going to take you back to when I was growing up in Philadelphia in the Buddy Ryan era, and that defense, the gangrene defense, Reggie White, Clyde Simmons, Jerome Brown, that whole era. You were the defensive coordinator under Buddy, who was a defensive-minded head coach for a few years there in Philly. What was it like coaching under him? Did he give you the leeway to implement what you wanted to do? What did you learn from him and just those great players on that team? Who were some of your favorites?
No, he didn't give you any leeway as what to play. I mean, he just come from the '85 Bears. He said, "Wade, will you come up and run my defense?" And it was his defense, which helped me philosophy-wise because I took a lot of things, a lot of the concepts that we used in the Bear defense and utilized them in the 3-4. Some of the concepts, not the exact Bear defense, but the concepts from it helped. But no, Jeff Fisher was there as the secondary coach, and both of us just taught what they had run at the Bears. And yeah, we had Reggie and Jerome Brown and Clyde Simmons and that other guy. I call him the other guy, Mike Golick. Yeah, so it was, and Byron Evans was a really good middle linebacker. We had a lot of good players.
Seth Joyner, right? Seth.
Yeah, Zeth. Yeah. Buddy called him Zeth. I don't know why, I don't know if he couldn't say Seth, but he always called him Zeth. Now, he called everybody by their number mostly. So,
yes.
He didn't call many guys by their name. I guess that's why. But I learned a lot of football from him. And he was a brilliant guy. He was a brilliant defensive mind. I mean, people talk about geniuses and this guy's a genius, that guy. But he really was as far as all those things are concerned. I mean, he could just spout it off, just boom, 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 let's do this. Now, being able to teach those things to the players, because he was with the Bears for a long, long time, and players didn't move as much then because of the bargaining agreement and so forth. So there wasn't much movement. So he had a lot of the same players for a long time. He didn't have to teach a new group all the time. Well, we came into Philadelphia, you had to teach a whole group that had never heard of any of these things. Never heard of cheeseburger blitz, Well, that's because Otis Wilson liked cheeseburgers. Well, we didn't have Otis Wilson. Nobody knew, but he still called it cheeseburger blitz. So everybody had to. So it was a lot more memorization for those guys. And Jeff and I had to work together to try to simplify. They run with the Bears, and we had, like I said, we had some pretty good players. Reggie White, people ask me who the best player I've ever coached. I will say the best year that anybody ever had was Reggie White, and in 1987, because we only played 12 games that year because of the strike. In the 12 games, he had 21 sacks. Now that was the NFL record in 12 games, not 16 games, but 12. And of course, Strahan broke that record. That year was almost impossible. I mean, you can't imagine a guy having 21 sacks in 12 games unless you were there, and I saw it.
Well, Wade, you talk about Buddy Ryan as a defensive genius, and obviously all of the accomplishments and achievements throughout your career as a head coach. People don't realize this. I didn't realize this, that no one has coached, because you had 3 head coaching positions and 3 opportunities to be an interim. So you were able to be the head coach for 6 different teams at various times. No one's ever done that. But you are also someone who now teaches the defensive philosophies, and you have the numbers defense certification course. Tell me a little bit about that and what people who have any interest in purchasing that course and signing up and getting that certification, what they can get out of it.
Yeah, I went through college, and there's no course in college that I've found that teaches you football enough that you can apply it and go out and coach with a lot of knowledge, especially defensively. So we put together this course because I didn't have it. It really should be a course in college for guys for anybody that's interested, whether they played football or not. You can learn. A lot of guys, didn't, or especially earlier, a lot of guys didn't. Paul Brown or people like that. Sid Gilman didn't even play football, but they ended up great coaches. They don't have that opportunity anymore. If you don't play football, you probably don't get into coaching, because you don't know any of this stuff. So we put this together because, and it helps young coaches, but I think it helps any coach. And it really is defensively. It's by we call it the numbers defense, because you can line up in any defense and make any call, whether it's 3-man, 4-man, 5-man fronts, and call it quickly. And this is because people hear about 2 techniques, 3 techniques, all that stuff. That came from my dad. That's all explained in this course, and how to utilize that into calling a defense or setting up a defense or playing defense overall. So we set that up. And then also we came up with a numbering system for the offense, and to be able to analyze the offense and know what they're going to do and work against what they can do, it's by their personnel. And so we came up with 11 personnel, 12 personnel. Some people have heard of it. Some people hadn't. They even mentioned it on TV. But it tells you how many backs and how many wide receivers, how many tight ends are in the game. So your planning is, if they're in 11 personnel, they can run these certain formations and these certain plays. Now, if they're in 12 personnel, it's different. And it's one back, two tight ends, they can, and two wide receivers. Then they run different plays, and they may run play action, or they may run different things. So to be able to set up the defense and then play against what the offense does, you need to know these numbers. We call it the numbers defense. It's numbersdefense.com, capital N, capital D, and you can take the course, and it's a course in that you have to pass the test.
I see that 3 exams to earn that certification, right?
Yes, to be certified, you have to pass the test to go to the next part of it, and to pass the test, you have to make an A. You can't pass the test and make a D. I mean, we want people to know the course when they finish, and when you certify somebody, we certify somebody, we know they can go out and coach right now.
Wade, this is really cool. It's a great opportunity for guys out there, for anyone out there really who wants to get involved. It's numbersdefense.com. Yeah, I got to tell you this too before we wrap it up. You're pretty good on Twitter. Your social media game is really strong. And how do you come up with, is that you just handling everything on your own? It's not like you have a PR team doing it for you.
Yeah, no, I don't. I just try to have fun with it. And it's really my personality. I mean, I have a little bit of a dry sense of humor sometimes, and I'm pretty laid back, except when it comes to stopping them on 4th down. But I enjoy it. And I actually started because when I became the head coach, you talk about head coaching, I've been head coach 6 times. I've been fired 6 times too. So I got the all-time record for most times as head coach and most times fired. So I think I'll probably keep both of those. But when I went with the Cowboys, Cowboys are known for their fans and so forth. Twitter was coming out then, and so it was a way to relate to the fans and let them just simple things. Hey, like we're gonna cage the Lions or something like that this week. Well, So I started having fun with that, and I'll continue with it. And I'm surprised that people are that interested in what I say.
It's really fun. You're a great follow. It's at Son of Bum on Twitter. So everybody wants to follow Wade Phillips. And again, it's numbersdefense.com for the course. Coach, really appreciated this chat, this conversation. Thank you so much.
Hey, you too. You're great, man.
The New York Jets are a mess, and can't avoid talking about them this week because we all have to see them play on Monday Night Football against the New England Patriots, who found out that life after Tom Brady is going to be quite difficult for Bill Belichick and company. There's no one better to examine New York's problems with than AP Pro Football writer and Jets beat writer Dennis Waszak. Dennis, you have the pleasure of covering the worst team in the NFL. The Jets are 0-8, one loss away from the franchise's worst start. We knew they were going to be a bad football team. Did you think they would be this dreadful, and what happened to them to get to this point?
Man, it has been quite a season so far. I mean, when you look at going into the season, the schedule that the Jets had in the first 8 games, you knew it would be tough. There were some tough matchups with 49ers on there, Patriots, the Bills twice. So you expected there to be some struggles, and especially since there were so many injuries at the wide receiver position. Jamison Crowder has missed games. Rashad Perryman has missed games. Their second-round draft pick, Denzel Mims, just came back 2 games ago. So the skilled players had some injuries, but you never expect 0-8, and we spoke to Joe Douglas, the GM, yesterday, and he said, everybody's frustrated. We never expected this. And I think it's been a combination of a lot of things. And like I said, mentioned the injuries, and it's hard to blame injuries and use that as an excuse because you see it all around the league. And look at what the 49ers are dealing with, the Cowboys, the Eagles. It's part of the game, but the Jets have had injuries to key players where they didn't have a lot of depth, so that's hurt. And like I mentioned, the wide receivers, they had guys like, Braxton Berrios starting, Vincent Smith, who just came back, Jeff Smith, who was a converted college quarterback, and when you look at that, and then the revamped offensive line, which has struggled this year, and combine that with the tight ends, Chris Herndon and Ryan Griffin, just really not doing anything, it's no wonder this offense has struggled. And let's face it, Adam Gase has struggled also as a play caller. And that's the reason the Jets are ranked last in the NFL in almost every offensive category. And you can't win games that way. When you're being outscored by 8 points, at least 8 points in every game. So there's just been many things that have gone on with this team to contribute to this 0-8 start. And it's hard to find too many bright spots on this team. And it's just, when you're talking about franchise history and you're looking at an 0-9 start for the first time ever, and I mean, that's just not the type of history you want to be part of. And these guys are going to try to do what they can to not get there on Monday night against New England, which has lost 4 in a row, and they're hungry for a win too. So it's been a rough season all around from the top to the bottom of this franchise, and it hasn't been easy covering this team either, because you get tired of writing the same story every week.
You can write them.
It's been rough.
Yeah, you can write them ahead of time. Now, we've seen other teams fire coaches in the season during the middle of a pandemic. So I'll ask the question that I'm sure many, many Jets fans are asking: how is Adam Gase still the coach?
That's a great question, and I think it's a valid question too. And I'll tell you what, I think after talking to Joe Douglas yesterday, on Tuesday, you heard him back Adam Gase, and a lot of people jumped on that and said, how could he do that? Well, the way the Jets are structured, the coach and the GM report directly to the owner. Adam Gase does not report to the GM, so he doesn't have that decision. He can't make that decision to fire Adam Gase. And I think the owner, Christopher Johnson, has really looked at this as like, hey, we've been in a bad position, yet the team has not fallen apart behind the scenes. There have been a couple of things, rumblings. Le'Veon Bell wasn't happy with how things were going. Well, he's gone. And I think there were a couple of trades recently that Joe Douglas pulled off with getting draft picks for Avery Williamson and Steve McClendon. Both of those guys were locker room leaders. And that's a balance that you have to kind of make when you're dealing away guys during an 0-8 stretch. And he was confident that there was enough leadership still in the locker room to not have something really fall apart there. And I think that's where you might give Adam Gase some credit, where you don't have a lot of those things being said right now. I mean, if they keep losing, that frustration might kind of boil over. But I think when you look at the Jets, they haven't ever fired a coach in the middle of a season. And I think that's in play here. And also, if there was a possibility to do so, I think it would come after, during their bye week. And that's coming up after this Patriots game. And from all indications, that won't happen. And Rob, when you look at it, what are things that the Jets fans want right now? They want even more than a win. They want that number 1 pick at the end of the season. And in a twisted way, they don't want Gase to leave because they think he gives them the best chance to go 0-16 and get that number 1 pick. So I don't think that there's going to be a move because of that.
And you know what? I was going to say that's the flip side of it, because if you move on from Adam Gase as the head coach and bring somebody else in or elevate somebody into an interim role, there's the possibility that you get the team to rally around a new guy and you might win a game.
Sure.
And you would spoil the opportunity for that number 1 pick. So obviously the Jets are the front runner, and with it, they would win the sweepstakes to get that number 1 pick in Trevor Lawrence. Is that a no-brainer for this organization? And if so, what do they do with Sam Darnold?
Man, I think it has to be a no-brainer. I think anyone who's sitting there at that number one spot, and you look at Trevor Lawrence and what he's been able to accomplish at Clemson, and just everything that he would bring with him in terms of that guy who is projected to be a franchise quarterback. And we've heard the comparisons to Andrew Luck, the first quarterback, the first most complete quarterback since Luck to come out and that kind of thing. Well, number one, first of all, we have to see if Trevor Lawrence even comes out. So if he declares for the draft, that's the first hurdle. Then the other thing is, if the Jets are at number one and they look at their situation, yes, they have Sam Darnold, but there are so many questions still about Sam Darnold, and I'm not sure that those can get answered before the draft. I mean, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. He missed 2 games with a sprained AC joint in his right shoulder earlier in the season, just last month, and it got banged up again on Sunday. And he's going to try to play this week. We're still waiting to hear. We'll hear later in the week but it sounds good that he'll probably play. But with this offense, he's just not looked good. He's kind of regressed, and it's hard not to with the way the entire offense is playing. I think what people from the outside would say is that, hey, Sam Darnold's in his 3rd year. At some point, he needs to try to elevate the players around him with his own play, and I don't think we're seeing that. Part of the problem, though, is it's twofold. One, his mechanics are off. You could see that there's certain things with his footwork that are a little off. He's rushing, but that's also because of what's happening around him. The offensive line, like I mentioned earlier, they revamped the offensive line. There are 5 new starters from week 1 this year to week 1, from week 1 last year, and they had no offseason to gel. They've struggled to kind of come together, other than Mekhi Becton, the rookie left tackle, who's been terrific, but he's also been banged up. The rest of the line has been inconsistent, and Darnold has gotten very little time, and I think in some cases he's gotten a little skittish, and he just, ball snap, pressure's coming, he's running, and, trying to make plays and forcing things, and he locks on receivers a little too much, and I think all of that's got his mind racing. So, to go back to the original question, I think because of all that, you might have to press the restart button and bring in a kid who has so much promise, and then you would try to see if there's a market for Sam Darnold in the draft. In April, see if somebody's looking for a younger quarterback, and there are plenty of teams that might take a chance on a 23. He'll be 24 next season. 24-year-old quarterback, and it's just unfortunate because what Sam Darnold meant to this organization just a few years ago, they envisioned him to be the guy for the next 10 years. That maybe the best quarterback this franchise has seen since Joe Namath.
I thought you were going to say since Mark Sanchez, man.
Well, no, and that's
I thought the same things about Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, and I think there was even greater hope because they thought of him as a full package, that he wouldn't just be a complimentary piece, that he could be a leader, and he's handled this well. That's the thing. He was made for New York. He's so even keeled. You talk to the kid, he's got it, up there. It just in terms of dealing with failure and success, and it just might be one of those unfortunate situations where everything leads to a departure and a new start for the Jets at quarterback in April.
I think he'd be a guy who would benefit from playing with someone or playing under someone other than Adam Gase. You mentioned Joe Douglas and speaking to the media this week. How secure is his job?
He's totally secure. They signed him to a 6-year deal last year when they hired him. He's only a year and a half into his tenure. And really, everybody needs to remember that when he was hired last year, it came after free agency, after the draft. So this was really the first full offseason that he had. So he's really just starting to put this roster together the way he wants to. Now, there have been some misses, and he acknowledged on Tuesday that he miscalculated or misjudged the market value of Robbie Anderson, who was having a terrific year in Carolina. he thought that the market would be even bigger for Robbie and that he would get greater money. And now he looks at it, a guy that they tried to replace him with, Rashad Perryman, has been banged up all year and really hasn't done much for them. A couple of other misses that he's had, bringing in Pierre Desir at cornerback, Quincy Wilson, they traded for a cornerback. Both of those guys have underachieved. He hit on Becton so far, and some of the draft picks with Michael Pirine, the rookie running back, will be a contributor. They think Denzel Mims will be a big-time contributor in the future, a wide receiver. But he's got a lot to prove, and I think what he's done by putting together these deals recently, they have 9 draft picks in each of the next 2 drafts, and 8 of those 18 are in the first 3 rounds. So he made a point of saying, look, the successful franchises with long-term success don't do it by buying that success. And what we need to do is build through the draft. So you're going to see an influx of a lot of young talent coming in the next 2 years. And he preached patience. And it's hard to hear that, especially when the team is 0-8. But I think he's seen it with the Eagles. He saw it with the Ravens and how those teams have built themselves into consistent contenders. And that's what needs to happen here. So I think he's very much safe right now. But this will be a tremendously, just a huge offseason for him, because they'll have a ton of cap space to sign free agents, and they have so many draft picks. So the renovation of this team, which will probably really be from scratch, will start as soon as this regular season ends.
He had that experience coming from Philly, and obviously they won a Super Bowl in his second year in Philly in 2017. But Eagles fans will look at that critically and say that draft, Joe Douglas is first, and we still don't know how much input he had with Howie Roseman. Of the 8 players they picked just 3 years ago, only 2 are left with the team. So they're stockpiling picks. They got to hit on those. Dennis, before you get out of here, let's talk about some real life stuff. Football's all fun and games, but in real life, as we're all going through this COVID-19 pandemic, you are somebody who experienced it, having dealt with it, you, your wife, your family, and there are a lot of people out there who have had it much worse. So grateful to be able to talk to you and know that you're doing well. You're back at work. You're covering the Jets. What was the entire experience like for you, and just how real is this thing for someone who's gone through it?
I'll tell you, Rob, after seeing and hearing about so many people who have dealt with it to varying degrees, and, I worked a lot on the news desk during the winter months and just reading different stories and editing stories. You hear all kinds of things. And I covered the Jets Broncos game on October 1st and felt fine. That was a Thursday night game. Friday, I felt fine. Saturday, I was fine. My oldest son, we have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. My oldest son started feeling a little blah. My youngest son, same thing. Sunday, I was working the NFL desk from home, and my wife felt pretty weak. She had a lot of, cold, flu-like symptoms almost, and I started getting them, and it was just like a rush of the symptoms. By the end of that night, I felt miserable. My head, congestion, my eyes hurt, my body ached, and then I went to bed, and the following day, Monday, everything was worse. And I decided, all right, something feels off here. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel just like a cold. So I went and got tested. And then I went to bed around midnight, Monday night. I woke up Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon at like noon, and I just couldn't get out of bed. And I finally got myself out, took a shower, and I was so wiped out that I went back to bed and slept for 3 more hours. And it was just like, this is bad, And then Wednesday, I'm still working, still doing conference calls and Zoom calls. During the Zoom call with Adam Gase, I got the email from the lab that I was positive for COVID, and it was my wife's birthday of all days, and
wow,
that was it. Yeah. So and then from there, she went and got tested, and she was positive, and the kids had. Their symptoms weren't too bad, but we had everything from like I had mentioned before, the body aches, eyes hurt, chills, cold sweats. My wife has asthma, so she had some lung tightness. I had a little bit too. And everything in between. You just have no fatigue, and you have no energy. You get this fatigue, and even today, it's just a month later, we're still just kind of building up our energy back. We're feeling good, but yeah, there are so many things, and you deal with freaking yourself out a little bit. You wake up in the middle of the night and you can't breathe, and you wonder, like, okay, is this going to get worse? And if it does get worse, do I have to go to the hospital? And if my wife has to go to the hospital, who's watching the kids? Because nobody can come here, because we have COVID, and all of those things are going through. And like you mentioned, a lot of people had it worse. Thankfully, we did not have to go to the hospital, and it took a while. It took a couple of weeks, but it's real, and I keep comparing it to getting the flu 3 times over. Just you feel like you've gotten past it, and then all the symptoms come back, and you go through it, and then they all come back again, and it's just this endless cycle of symptoms and just feeling lousy and just worrying if they're going to go away at any point, or it's just going to get worse. And and just like, I feel for all of those families that have lost people, and because it just hits you. And like I said, Rob, Thursday I was fine, Friday I was fine, Saturday mostly, and boom, and then it's just, you don't know. And we don't know how we got it to this day. We have been so careful throughout this whole time since March, masks and everything, and very little contact with people, and don't know how it happens, and it could be just one, contact. It could be just one thing, who knows? And that's the scary part of this. So everybody needs to just kind of remain safe and follow, the protocols. And that's the only thing that I can recommend. And then just really just, try to be safe with this and know that it's real, and it can happen when you have no idea that, or think that it can happen, because really it happened to us, and it took a while, and it was, like I said, it was scary.
Well, we see the NFL constantly put out reminders and update their COVID protocol and tell people, and now they're extending the sidelines to the 20s and asking players, encouraging them when they come off the field to put their masks on, and now they're mandating it pregame, postgame, halftime, all of that stuff, and it's for a reason. So, man, I'm glad that you and your family, thankful and grateful that you guys are okay. And Dennis is an awesome follow. So at DWaz73 on Twitter. If you're a Jets fan, if you're an NFL fan, make sure you follow Dennis there. Man, I really appreciate it and wish you guys all the best.
Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate it, man.
Joining me now for our weekly chat, my colleague Barry Wilner, AP Pro Football writer and Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. Barry, we've reached the halfway point for some teams in the NFL, and the others who haven't played their 8th game are going to do so this week. What does your Final Four look like at this point? I'll give you mine quickly. I think we're in agreement, most likely, most people are, in the AFC, Kansas City and Pittsburgh. In the NFC, I'm going to go with Seattle, who showed me something with that nice win over the weekend against San Fran. And I'm going to go with Tampa because I think they'll continue to get better. Antonio Brown coming in, that offense will build more chemistry, and I'm really high on their defense. So I'll go Seattle, Tampa, KC, Pittsburgh. What's your Final Four?
Well, I almost have to agree with you. I will say that I'm going to hedge you a little bit, that I would think the winner of the South in the NFC between the Saints and the Buccaneers will be one of the Final Four teams. And they play this weekend.
Yes.
So we'll get a pretty good gauge on both teams. I do agree with you that the Buccaneers might be a little bit better than the Saints. And, of course, they have, the added weapon of Brady's experience in big games, which is huge. And I like Seattle a lot, but I worry about Seattle. I think someone from that division, it could be the Rams, could even be the Cardinals, will come out of that division and make the Final Four. The thing I worry about with Seattle is that the Seahawks play games close when they shouldn't. And you can get burned that way. I think they probably should have beaten Arizona when they played a couple of weeks ago. But they have this tendency to gamble a little too much and also just to let teams get back in games. And that can be real damaging for them. in the AFC, to me, it's a two-team race in Pittsburgh and Kansas City, and anybody who can bust through that would be a surprise to me.
Well, and obviously this year in the NFL, it's going to look a little bit different with only one team getting the bye instead of two teams. So playing for that one seed and that bye is a huge deal, which Pittsburgh at this point undefeated has that advantage. And in the NFC, it's going to be a battle among several teams. It looks like both you and I are a little bit down on Green Bay. I was very surprised by the way they played against Minnesota. I know they came back and almost made it a closer game than that score indicated, but now they've been blown out by Tampa and they lose at home to Minnesota. That's why I couldn't put them in that upper echelon, that elite, that Final Four. I still think there'll be a team that's going to be there at the end, to be reckoned with. How disappointing do you think was that performance for them, and do they have more problems than maybe some of us thought?
They have a major hole in that they can't stop the run. And if they wind up playing Tampa, New Orleans, or Seattle, those are all teams that not only can run the ball, but emphasize the run. So I would think that Green Bay needs to fix that very quickly. And, other than Devontae Adams, they don't really – and the tight end who's really come on, they don't really have receivers you worry about. And if you can find a way to neutralize Devontae Adams a little bit, the Packers could have issues there too. That said, Aaron Rodgers is capable of carrying teams pretty far that aren't all that talented.
Before we get to a couple of the matchups this weekend, trade deadline came and went. Nothing really major, no huge surprises, no blockbuster deals. I didn't anticipate that happening this year. Any surprises for you? Maybe teams that didn't make a move, like a Green Bay, there was some talk about them looking to add a receiver. Was there anything that stood out to you?
More so that some of the teams that are totally out of it didn't do more of a dump of players, especially ones who had decent salaries, because the salary cap is not going up next year. And who knows where it will be at, considering the pandemic and what the after effects will be into 2021. So I thought that maybe some teams that were not in contention would unload players, but it didn't happen.
All right. We mentioned this earlier. It's a big game. It's probably one of the biggest ones on the weekend schedule. Tampa against New Orleans, Sunday Night Football. Now, you covered the Buccaneers, who struggled against the Giants on Monday Night Football. Saints won the matchup in Week 1. Obviously, whoever wins this game is going to get a nice hold on that NFC South, and they need it. Whoever wins this, if New Orleans wins it, they're going to have sort of a 2-game advantage because they would have beaten Tampa Bay twice, and they'd get the tiebreaker. What do you see in this one? What can we expect from Antonio Brown in his Tampa debut? That line being Tampa minus 4.5, coming off a struggle Monday night. I thought it would be closer to a 3.5 point line. It's a decent number at 4.5.
It is, and I think part of that's based on the odds makers not being sure if Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders will play. That makes a huge difference in a game like that. At full strength, if both teams are full strength, I think the Saints are just as good as the Buccaneers, but the Saints are not at full strength, and the Buccaneers are closer to it. The Bucs could have lost that game to the Giants, and I believe that Tom Brady was quite a bit off in the first half, especially. I think the elements actually may have bothered him a little bit in MetLife Stadium, some swirling wind. I was not real impressed with Tampa in that game, but I think that when you come to the really big games, Brady just has a way of getting his guys together and outplaying the good teams, or no matter where it's played, the big division games. So I kind of lean toward Tampa, but I think it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I think they may have gotten caught in a little bit of that look ahead, as much as NFL players and players in every sport say, no, we focus on the game at hand and we don't look ahead. They have a big game in the division coming up. Giants at 1-6 or whatever they were going into that game. I think some guys got caught looking ahead, and they're lucky. Like you said, they're lucky they got away with it. Here's another one that's very interesting to me. The Bears at 5-3. They visit Tennessee at 5-2. Both teams are coming off 2 straight losses. The Titans are a solid 6-point favorite in this one. Nick Foles' magic, it seems to have worn off a little bit, but he's got no help up front. He's getting no time to throw. He's very limited in the pocket. So that's part of the problems with Chicago. Now we find out that Mitchell Trubisky's got an injury. So if at all, Matt Nagy, and you said this last week, you didn't think he was going to go to Trubisky at all anyway. That's off the table. I'm looking at a 6-point number here in a game between two 5-win teams. And when I look at that line and what the odds makers are thinking, I'm leaning towards Tennessee.
I like the Titans big in this game for several reasons. Number one is that offensive line, like you mentioned, for the Bears. And the Bears just can't run the ball. And I know the Bears have a very good defense. I don't think it's quite as good as it's been the last couple of years, but it's still a good defense. They have to show they can stop Derrick Henry, because even against good defenses against the run, Henry gets his yards and gets his carries and basically gets his touchdowns. So I like Tennessee. I think Chicago is really a mediocre team, a 500 team, maybe a 9-win team. I think Tennessee is a much better team than that.
Baltimore and Indianapolis, 2 5-2 teams are playing, and Baltimore's coming off that loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, which was, I thought it was a surprise. You called it. You liked the Steelers in that one, so shout out to you. Kudos to you, Barry. Colts, I think they're getting no respect here. They're 2.5-point underdogs at home, coming off a pretty nice win against the Lions. I don't know what the Ravens' COVID situation is. Neither do the odds makers. So I'm kind of surprised that it's 2.5, which leads me to believe that if they thought that all the guys are going to be there and healthy, they might even be a bigger number. How do you see this game shaking out?
I think what people look at in this game is that the Ravens lost 2 games to Kansas City and Pittsburgh, probably the 2 best teams in the league. And the Ravens are pretty solid otherwise. And that the Colts, while they have a real nice record and probably are going to be in the mix for the playoffs, maybe even winning that division, they haven't really beaten anybody that impresses you. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it. The Ravens when the Ravens lose, they tend to rebound until the playoffs at least. They tend to rebound very quickly. There's a lot of reasons I like the Ravens in this game. I think that they'll be able to move the ball well and run the ball well. So I would very much lean toward the Ravens in that game.
I thought Lamar Jackson played poorly, made some bad throws, errant passes, poor decisions against the Steelers. Any thought that maybe some of the defenses, the league has kind of somewhat figured him out?
I think it's more that defenses are forcing him to read what they're doing, and he's just not that far in the progression yet. I talked to somebody else today about this, Rob. It's a great point that he exploded on the scene much quicker than I think anyone, including John Harbaugh, expected. And he was the unanimous MVP last year. It was a spectacular season. But he really was ahead of the curve. And now I think they're seeing that it was a little bit of an aberration. And I'm not saying that he's going to be a flop or anything like that. I think he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback for years. But there are holes in his game, and we're starting to see some of them. And part of it could be what opponents are able to do to him, and part of it is just simply he hasn't made those big steps to be Patrick Mahomes yet, or, to go with veteran quarterbacks. He hasn't made the big steps to be where Roethlisberger or Tom Brady might be.
A game that you got a lot of interest in. I want you to explain this to me, because it's Miami coming off a win into his first start. So they're above 500. They're 4-3, and they're going to Arizona, and they're a 5-2 team, very much so in the mix in the NFC West. You think Miami's got a shot to climb in there and compete with Buffalo?
Yes, I do. Right now, I think Miami's playing the best football in that division. Again, not a great division, especially with the collapse of the Patriots. I'm so intrigued by this game for several reasons, Rob. Number one is the quarterback. I want to see over a group of 3 or 4 weeks how Tua does. He didn't have to do much last week because special teams and defense put Miami ahead in that game against the Rams. And so I want to see how Tua does. I love what I've seen from Kyler Murray. The progression there is straight up, and he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. So I really like that. I like what the 2 coaches are doing. I like the way they've put together their teams. I like the schemes I see. In Arizona, I like the schemes I see on offense and defense. stingiest defense in the league right now is Miami. So I have tremendous interest in this game. And, yeah, I do think both of those, if you ask me pretender or contender, I think they're both contenders for the playoffs.
That should be an interesting race in the AFC East because it's obviously going to be Buffalo. New England's out of it at this point, and they have some difficult decisions coming up and cap situations and all of that stuff. Let me ask you one more team that they showed me something last week. Vegas going into Cleveland and beating the Browns. Now they're going to be on the road again, this time against the Chargers. They're 4-3. Chargers are coming off a disastrous last-second loss. They're 2-5, yet this game's a pick-em. Did the Raiders prove something to you last week, or was that more a case of the Browns are just not quite ready for prime time yet?
I think it's more of the Browns than anything, but the Raiders showed me that when they get the mindset to play a physical game and try to run the ball down your throat, no matter who you are, that they can win games. That game was played in probably the worst conditions we've seen all season, with the whipping winds and the cold and the snow and rain. I think Derek Carr said that the snow was coming down sideways into his helmet at one point through his face mask. So they did prove to me they can play that type of game. I wouldn't be surprised, however, if the Chargers win this game. The Chargers just have to learn how to finish. They've been in so many games where they just couldn't finish off opponents. And I do like what I've seen, obviously, from Justin Herbert. He's been very solid every week.
Barry, as always, man, good stuff, and look forward to chatting with you next week.
You bet, Rob.
Time for some final thoughts. I heard a lot of cries to bench Carson Wentz this week following a 4-turnover game in an Eagles 23-9 win over Dallas on Sunday Night Football. And that wasn't just coming from fickle Philly fans who I get to hear every day covering the Eagles, but from hot takers nationally who really have no clue other than what they see on TV. And they're always going to be quick to blame the quarterbacks and the coaches because you know what? That doesn't take actual insight. It's just the easiest thing to do. So let me clear it up. Carson Wentz should not be benched for Jalen Hurts. Any suggestion that he should be benched for a rookie drafted in the second round is completely asinine. Yes, I know Carson's got 12 interceptions this season. He only threw 7 each of the last 3 years. It's not like he was Jameis Winston, a turnover machine up until now. And he's also lost 4 fumbles. He's obviously not playing great football. He's struggling this season after carrying a practice squad team to the playoffs last December. So how about we consider this? How about we consider the fact that 11 guys have played on the offensive line in front of him this year? And that includes 10 different starters and 4 guys who've never played a game before at any point in their life in the NFL. And he's also had to deal with losing 3 starting wide receivers, both starting tight ends, a starting running back who happens to be the team's best weapon in Miles Sanders. He's got inexperienced rookie receivers running wrong routes, sometimes not fighting for the ball, not making a play for the ball. The play calling itself has been very questionable. And oh, by the way, Carson and that practice squad of an offense that he's got, they put up 29 points against the Steelers and lost, and 28 against Baltimore and lost. And he's also helped turn a guy, Travis Fulgham, who's been cut by 3 teams in the past 6 months, into a legitimate number 1 receiver in the NFL. The Eagles have the luxury of playing in the NFC East. They're front runners to win a division. They should win a division. They have 8 games left to work through their issues, win that division, get a home playoff game in January. So you don't bench your franchise quarterback for a rookie, but don't let that stop you from hot taking your way through a segment. That's it for this week's AP Pro Football Podcast. Thank you to Wade Phillips, Dennis Waszak, and Barry Wilner. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts. Share it and leave a review. And also check out our college football writer, Ralph Russo, and his AP Top 25 College Football Podcast. Until next week, I'm Rob Maaddi, reminding you, make a difference. Be a blessing.